This is Chris Voss, former FBI hostage negotiator and author of Never Split the Difference, telling you that everything in life is a negotiation. And if you want to hone your negotiating skills, you should be starting every Monday with the Waste No Day podcast.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnie.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your hosts, Nate and Brian, hanging out with you again and looking forward to a great episode today. We have Sandy Hein from the Black Swan Group on with us today. That's right, another Black Swan Group person who's going to be bringing absolutely great information. We're looking forward to talking with her today about some of the basic foundational elements of communication that will directly apply to what you can do right now in the home or to the next house that you're going to. It's going to be a good conversation, and Sandy is just a total blast, so we're looking forward to having a good time with her today. But we're going to spend just a minute or two talking about this idea for you ourselves, and we're going to turn to Brian for our quote.
It's not always about being nice. It's not about liking them or getting them to like you necessarily. I worked sex crimes for 12 years. Do you think I liked the people I was dealing with? Sandy Hein.
I saw that one coming.
A great YouTube video. She's probably, I don't know, she probably says this several times throughout her training, but it is a stark reminder that, you know, there is that research that people who like you are more prone to doing business with you. But also we all have people we deal with, like doctors in particular, have this thing where they're just very authoritative. Like you trust them. You don't necessarily want to go have a beer with them, but you trust them. They are an authority. And I love that quote of hers that oftentimes you can take the likability piece out of it and still get the sale, and still get whatever you're looking for in the negotiation, if you will.
Yeah, and it is always a negotiation, right? I mean, everything in life really is in terms of when you are coming across somebody who is not yourself. And I mean, we even spend time arguing with ourselves. So one could say that we're constantly living in a negotiation. But for all of you in the trades who are going in and out of houses on a regular basis, you're dealing with another person. And whether it feels like it or not, a negotiation is happening. You're trying to explain your side of the story. They're trying to explain their side of the story. And there has to be a coming together of where those two paths cross. And so many times, if the correct journey or steps or path or direction is not taken, we miss the point. And we may never actually get to a place where we can come together in terms of what we need to do or how much it's going to cost or why it's happening or why it's not happening. And so negotiation, the principles behind it, and general communication is what we're going to be talking about today. And those are absolutely applicable to your everyday life for everybody who's in the home services industry and, frankly, everybody in general.
100%. So we're going to talk, if you're an avid listener, you know this show, we've had 3 other Black Swan Group trainers on this show. If you have not heard them or it's been a while, I would recommend, to coincide with this episode, catch up on the other 3. They all talk generally about the same thing, but from their own different viewpoints. And their stuff is, I mean, I can't say enough about it. Like their stuff is perfect for sales, for negotiation. There's never been anything better anymore. To me, and I say this often, Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss's book, is the sales blueprint anymore. I don't know of a book that even comes close anymore. And it really changed the way to go about it, but communication in general. So if you want to look them up, cool. If not, no big deal. Just press skip forward 15 seconds right now. The Brandon Voss, who is the president of the Black Swan Group, Chris Voss's son, his episode was August 30th, 2021. And then Derek Gaunt, who was the commander of the Washington, D.C. hostage negotiation team for 20 years, I believe, author of Ego, Authority, Failure. He was on April 18th, 2022. And then Chris Voss, the author of Never Split the Difference, was on the show July 18th, 2022. So highly recommend. This episode goes perfectly with those other 3 episodes. They're very entertaining, although probably not going to be as entertaining as Sandy is going to be today. But they're all very easy to listen to, and you will get a ton out of them.
You're absolutely right, Brian. And there is a lot of information we're going to try to cover with Sandy today. And so for that reason, we're going to just cut right to that special time of the week where we highlight one of our amazing listeners. For the review of the week, Brian, who are we focusing on today?
ND STEMUR, Steamer. Murphinator 20. I bet that's our buddy Steve Murphy. My man, Steve Murphy. Steve is a plumbing tech for Benjamin Franklin Plumbing Lancaster, where my man Nate's at right now. 5-star
Yes, sir.
review. I look forward to every episode. Always starts off the week right. Yeah. Thanks, Murph. I think it's Steve Murphy. If not, it's got to be another Steve Murphy. So I don't know if you watched Narcos, but one of the 2 main characters in the first Narcos season was Agent Stephen Murphy. So there are more than one. But either way, appreciate the review, whether it's the Steve we know or not. And anyone who takes the time to leave a review, we really appreciate it. If you don't leave a review and you just listen from time to time, we still appreciate you, because giving us an hour and a half out of your week is an investment, and we don't take that lightly. So we do mean to, as much as we can, pack as much content as possible into this hour and a half, hopefully 2 hours on this episode.
Some might even say it's a discipline, Brian. Some might also say it's a punishment. I'm not sure. But either way, we do appreciate it. And we know that you now are going to appreciate Sandy Hein as we put her in your passenger seat. Our guest today is Sandy Hein. She is a negotiation instructor and coach at the Black Swan Group. She has been with the company since December of 2011 and transitioned to a full-time role in July of 2020. Sandy began her career as a police officer in Alexandria, Virginia, and wore many hats during her 23-year stint, including 10 years as a hostage negotiator. She was also a certified instructor with the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services and served on the training faculty of the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. Since retiring from law enforcement in 2012, Sandy has gone on to teach criminal justice to high school students, author books, and train law enforcement agents across the country in several areas, including sexual violence, crisis intervention, and hostage negotiations. With the Black Swan Group, Sandy follows her passions for teaching. She enjoys connecting with clients on a personal level and using a conversational approach to help them realize that, regardless of their personality or experience, they can use the Black Swan method if they have the right mindset and are committed to improvement. In her spare time, Sandy is an avid reader. She has been known to peruse 4 to 6 books at a time with the help of an e-reader. In the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are considered especially heinous. In Virginia, the dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Special Victims Unit. Welcome to the show, Sandy.
All right. Nice intro, buddy. YouTube's not playing this one.
Wow, that's
it's good to have you on the show, actually. Sandy, and we're so excited.
No one's ever done that before,
and for you to be with us. We always love anybody from the Black Swan Group because they always have such great content, and we're really excited to talk to you today about so many of the things that you've learned throughout your extensive history in law enforcement, hostage negotiation, and beyond, and how we can apply that to our world, which is the home services trades. So welcome here, and we'd sure love to jump into the topic, but we always love to understand a little bit about our guest, their history, what makes them tick, how they got started in whatever career they are doing, and what current day looks like for them as well. So why don't you give us the tour?
Before you do, though, it was funny when Nate said, I'm just going to hop in there. Sorry to jump all over you there. When Nate said, you're into hostage negotiation and law enforcement, and we're going to see if we can bring it into our world, I was like, yep, parenting. You're right. Absolutely right. So I can hear my kids screaming outside the door right now who are supposed to be very quiet for an hour. Nope. Sorry. By all means, say it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they hear, okay, be very
as soon
close
as you
to
tell
the
them
door
that,
noise.
be very quiet for an hour, it's going to get uber noisy because
coming.
that's what happens. Yes, knock on the door, actually. Just go ahead. Come on in. Yeah. All right, so I started in law enforcement in 1989 and worked 4.5 years in midnight patrol. And then I became what everyone refers to as a career detective because I spent the entirety of the rest of my 23-year career there as a detective. 5 years in the youth sex and abuse unit. 3 years in commercial burglary, which was...
Right.
I'm not going to say it was kind of lame, but no one cares in commercial burglary because it's not personal. It's their business. And as long as insurance pays, if insurance pays them back, they don't care. They get their money back, and it's even hard to get them to cooperate or come to court if I do catch somebody. So that was difficult. So as soon as the adult sex crimes position opened up, I moved there. And the last 11 or 12 years of my career, I spent in the adult sex crimes portion of the violent crimes unit. So I was there for 23 years, and then I got injured, and it's not a good story, and I'm not going to tell it because when I see people in person, they can ask me. That's an incentive for people to have something to talk to me about if they ever see me in person or on a virtual event. I left police work and kind of floundered around for a couple of years. I appreciate what you guys do, all this tech stuff and house stuff, because I got really into let's do stuff to my house, right? I started painting. I painted every room. And then after that year, I didn't have a job yet because I was just kind of floundering around and enjoying retirement and going back to the store and picking new colors. And my husband was like, over my dead body, are you painting this house again? So, yeah. So he saw this announcement for the high school was looking to hire a criminal justice teacher. And I was like, eesh, you want me to go teach high school? That's brutal. And so I'm in retirement mode at this point, right? 2 years not working. It's just painting. And I
an application
filled out the
for
application what? At some point in the application it says, do this essay. And I said, I'm not doing that. I am not writing an essay. I'm done. Essay days are over for me. And I didn't do it. To be a teacher, the criminal justice teacher at the high school. Yeah. And so I said, I'm not doing that. And I just clicked out of the application. And so, probably a month later, I get a call from the high school, and I'm thinking, my daughter was a student there at the time, and I thought, why is the high school calling me? And so I answer the phone thinking, what has she done? Oh my gosh, she's an honor student, but she's in trouble for the first time ever in her life. And I answer the phone, and they say, oh, we were wondering if you would come in and interview for the criminal justice teacher position. And I said, oh, really? I said, well, I never actually applied. She said, does that mean you don't want the job? And I'm like, no, I'll come in and interview. That's fine. Perfect. Whatever. So I go in and I do the interview and I get the job. And it's kind of cool that I'm doing this podcast here with you guys because the section of the school that I was under was career and technical education. So I worked with all those teachers that were teaching those career and those technical fields. And it's really cool to see the number of students that go into those jobs and end up making really good money and having really good stable lives in those technical jobs. They can't afford college, even if they have the grades to go. Most of them can't afford it, and yet they end up coming out and making more money than these kids that end up going to a 4-year college. This is what I found amusing about the whole thing. I mean, I guess it's not really funny when you think about it, funny, but when you have kids that go away to college for 4 years and then they have trouble finding jobs and they end up taking these, starter jobs where they're barely making ends meet, and then you see the kids that are going through HVAC or going through
you can call that comical irony,
like that, and they get certified in their fields and they're making twice as much as the kids that went to college before those kids even get out of college. you know, and I hate that we always encourage kids college, because I have 3 daughters. 2 of them didn't go to college. It wasn't for them. So, you know, it's just how it is. The third one, she ended up going. She had the brains to go, and she did really well. And you know, I'm proud of her. But I don't think going to college is necessary. I think that the trades are where it's at right now. So when you guys asked me to come on the podcast, I was like, yes, because I so support your industries, and I so support the kids going straight into those industries and getting that training and having those good, stable jobs, because we need.
What city are you in, Sandy? We can get you taken care of.
You know, there's a shortage of
handle
HVAC
that.
people. I know this on a personal level. There's a shortage of HVAC people.
Don't
in
say
my
your
area.
phone number, whatever you
I'm
do.
in Northern Virginia, so there you go. Please make it happen. But yeah, I love to see that. Oh no, no, that's okay. I'll keep that to myself. But yeah, so I have a great appreciation for what you guys do, and if anybody deals in customer service in such a unique way, it's you guys, because when you're talking about coming into someone's house, into their environment, it's not much different than what we did in law enforcement, where we would go in and we're infringing in their territory to come in for something. I mean, granted, ours is a little more probably, yeah, and probably not as welcome as yours, because they usually call you there, and we usually show up for something they won't deal with. So, you know, but, you know, either way, it's the same kind of thing. You're kind of going into their territory and having to deal with them. And I can see where that would make somebody nervous, because as a law enforcement officer, you kind of had to be on your P's and Q's when you went into someone's house, because you never know what's around the corner. I mean, do they have big dogs that are going to come attack you? Are there 15 people in the other room we don't know about? You know, all those things kind of make it a little bit more difficult for us. And it makes it difficult for you because a person's home is a very personal thing to them. So when you go in to fix something or do something, you're going into that environment, and it kind of puts you off kilter right away. So, and so the skills that we use at Black Swan worked for us when we did that in law enforcement, and they will work for you, you know, in the same way when you're going into someone's house and you kind of feel a little bit awkward. I know you guys mentioned before we came on that, you know, you have the people that say, well, you know, you need this and you need that, but they don't push it home. They don't bring that sale home like, oh, so you want me to do this for you right now? They don't do that. And I think part of the reason
Sure,
is
and it
because
makes
they
perfect
feel
sense, because I'll
awkward or
always ask techs when I'm
uncomfortable
training
because they're
them
in
this
someone else's
portion, which
environment.
is
And so
you've
it
done a great
automatically puts them a
presentation,
little
you've
bit,
made a friend, you've
you know, gets them a little
or at least
uneasy.
Established yourself as an authority, and you're well respected and trusted, and you show a great product, a great service, and then you just kind of both stare awkwardly at each other until the client says, if you want to give me your card, I'll stick it to the fridge and we'll call you after the weekend or whatever. And then they forget you exist and you forget they exist. But if you were with your friend and looking at buying your old mower, and you're like, $100, you're gonna end with, do you want it or not? Like, or some version of that. You know, you're gonna end with like, will you take it? And we don't do that in sales. There's a survey I read that 85% of salespeople or sales presentations across the country, across all industries, end without a person ever being, I'll say, given the opportunity to become an owner, but without ever being asked to buy, like a yes or no question, which is
Right. And that's huge in and of itself. And I'm thinking from the perspective of being a Black Swan trainer, you know, I'm thinking if you're in that situation, what's gonna be the thing that causes you to continue the conversation? What's gonna be the thing that pushes you to say what that buyer needs to hear? And this is going to sound completely ridiculous, but the thing that's going to help the most is you listening to what they have to say. Because, and this is my area of, please people pay more attention to this that I do with the Black Swan Group, because people don't know how to listen. People read the book, they watch our videos, they come to our events, and they focus in on the skills. And it's great. Using the skills is great. It's what's going to bring it home for you. But if your mindset isn't right, and if you don't understand the steps that it takes to get you where you need to go, you're gonna fail every time, because the people are gonna tell you exactly what they need. They're gonna tell you exactly what you need to say, and if you're listening, you'll get it. But if you're not listening, over your head, you're gonna miss it. And that's one of the biggest problems, and that's one of the things that I soapbox about a lot at the Black Swan group is everybody listens so poorly that they miss the cues. They miss the opportunities where they can
like
step
taking
in
confessions
and say,
and,
it seems like that's something you'd really be
doing that
interested
kind of thing in law enforcement where
because they're not paying attention.
Examining. Oh, okay. So you
think,
do know this.
I think she was probably
well.
taking more statements than confessions. I mean, maybe she got lucky.
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. No. I did really well with that because, especially in sex crimes, because the last thing someone who commits a sex crime expects from you is you to listen to them when they're talking, and for you to treat them as a human, because most of the time they come, if they're not a sociopath, which I dealt with a few of those, but not fun. Those were not fun ones. But those people that commit those crimes, when you get them in and you're talking to them as if they're a human, and you're using empathy, they actually, when you're not asking them any questions, because that's what we tell you, use labels. You don't have to ask questions all the time. If any question you can ask, you can turn it into a label. So if you want to ask somebody,
oh yeah,
why
absolutely,
they did
this is entertaining. I don't care if we get back to the
trades.
trades.
The worst word you can use, unless you're looking for proof of life, and we can go into that more if you want to. But so if you don't want to ask people why makes people defensive, why makes you feel like you have to justify your own existence. So instead of asking somebody why they did something, say, it seems like you have a reason for doing that. And just go quiet. And that's a lot of times how I would get confessions, because it seems like you had a reason for doing what you did. And then I didn't ask why. I essentially did ask why, but I didn't say why, so they didn't get defensive. And then they start talking about everything. They start pouring their life history out to me. And the key is I listened. And when I listened, as they paused, I would throw in a mirror or throw in a label and send them in a different direction. And eventually, it took a little time, and patience is a virtue in these.
You say
these kind of things.
You say throw in a mirror, throw in a
point
label. What does
I was
throw
all
in
of
a
sudden
mirror
like
mean when
the
you're
priest in
okay?
the confessional,
Nate's
and they were telling me everything.
Getting ready to be convicted of a.
Here we go.
No. we won't
Here
role
we
play
go.
that one. But if you've got, so you have Nate kind of pouring out his soul and probably saying way more than he wants to say, I'm guessing at this point. What does it mean to throw in a mirror or a label at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go with math again. Like every week we got to do math.
Sandy,
on
we
this
have
show.
plumbers that listen to this, so if you could break it down a little
Thank you,
more
buddy.
simple.
Hey, I appreciate that, Nate.
The 3 skills.
Most of them have 3 fingers, if not 3 teeth, so we should be fine.
All right, so there are 3. I can say 3 skills, right? I'm not asking them to add at that point. So there are 3 skills. Okay, cool. Oh, Nate. So there are 3 skills that probably give the biggest return if you can learn to use them kind of in your everyday conversation in everything you say. That's labels, mirrors, and dynamic silence. The mirror is basically you repeat the last 1 to 3 words, or 1 to 3 words in the sentence that is what you want the person to keep.
They don't feel like they're being asked a question?
And so you can do it with an upward inflection.
You did the
like
high
question,
inflection,
but there's
though.
no question buzzword, so they don't feel like they're being asked a question. Or if you're doing it,
oh, okay, all right,
very good. That's a very long thing, though. Now, I mean, the inflection was good, actually, Nate, but you too many words. With a mirror, it should be like 1 to 3. If you do too many words, it takes away the effectiveness of the mirror because you're saying too much. You're repeating too much, and then they have to focus more on what you're saying, and that may cause
shorter is better.
Interrupt. And mirrors
Suck
normally
up.
don't when they're 1 to
Total
3
suck
words.
up.
4 words, 5 words at the absolute most, but shorter is better. Yes, less is more. Very good. Nice mirror. But you can also use a mirror to encourage the person to keep talking. So if you want a mirror with a downward inflection, it's basically I get it. I get what you're saying. And then encouragement to keep talking. So mirrors, what I have found, people are either really, really good at mirrors and they love them, or people are terrified of them and they don't pull them off very well, because it's something that once you learn how to kind of put it into a normal conversation and it sounds normal and conversational, then it's unbeatable to get information quickly. And it doesn't take much work. Somebody says a sentence to you and you just pick 1 or 2 words and mirror them with an upward inflection and you send them in that direction. And a little key thing with mirrors, if you deal with someone who's very assertive and they talk a lot, like the people
I'm an accommodator, actually.
Edgewise.
Nate is an analyst.
Like,
you're the only assertive on this program right now. Yep.
The fingers are pointing.
Out comes the bull.
Oh gosh, I'm the only assertive on the call. I'm taking over now. You shouldn't have told me. I'm just kidding. Yes, rawr. So if you have an assertive person who just keeps talking, everyone has to breathe at some point. So as soon as they breathe, pick 1 or 2 words that they've said at some point with an upward inflection, and if they're going to keep talking, at least send them in the direction of them saying what you want to hear.
So what is send Nate in a direction real quick with something like? I mean, you're working with at least Chris is an assertive,
everyone has
right?
to breathe at some point, and then you send them in that direction.
Chris Voss, being the CEO of the Black Swan Group, author of Never Split the Difference.
Chris is uber assertive. Yes, it's funny because
episode 100 of Waste No Day podcast.
Yes, the main guy. Yes, the big guy. When Chris and I train together, it's 2 assertives. It's actually kind of comical because I usually end up having to back off and do what I refer to as playing the good cop, because Chris is the guy, right? So he gets to be whichever cop he wants to be. So if he's
all right, well, let's try this out. So, Sandy, I got to be honest. I'm really frustrated here. Your company's been out here now 2 times to fix a simple issue. I went with you guys. You were the higher price, but your comfort advisor said that this was going to be great and that everything was going to be fine. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, it wasn't fine. And now here we are, 13 plus days, and I've had only 7 days of air conditioning, and I've frankly had it. This is complete baloney, and I'm done. You got it. No, you're a technician.
So I'm the technician responding to that, or am I on the phone? What am I doing? Okay, so I'm the technician because you know what?
No, I didn't. Sir, and frankly, I don't care how you feel, because you're not the one sweating. I'm the one sweating. My family's sweating. My wife is literally up to here. And like, you don't have to deal with it. I'm the one that's having to deal with it. I chose your company because you alleged it was going to be fine, and here we are, and it's not.
I'm sorry, sir. You're right. You're the one that's had to deal with this hot weather, and I'm terribly sorry that your family's been inconvenienced and that you've been inconvenienced.
Well, somebody's got to make it right, Sandy, because at this point, I mean, I got the AG on speed dial because we're way outside of the bounds of what this contract was supposed to be.
Yep.
I'm glad you're sorry, but here I am still sweating. So what are we going to do?
You have every right to want somebody to fix your air conditioning for you, and we're really sorry about it. So,
it's getting pretty uncomfortable.
And I'm at your house.
Now you're hot.
Where's the air conditioning unit? Let me go take a look at it. I'm not going to keep doing this back and forth. I'm going to say, okay. Well, I mean, on the phone, that would actually be more difficult to deal with on the phone, because you're not there where you can take any action. But if I'm a technician, I'm at the house, and I'm going to say, you know what, sir, I'm really, really sorry. How about you show me that air conditioning unit, and I'll take care of it for you right now, and show me where it's at, and just go get to work. And the thing you don't do is
it's not that hot here. Please relax.
Thing that they're complaining.
You should have seen the last house I was at.
They're angry. They have a right to be angry. You have to let them vent on you a little bit, and that makes things. No, and there's nothing. Oh my gosh, yeah. You think this is bad. Yeah, you never want to downplay anything that they're upset about. I mean, it's kind of like equating it in law enforcement. You go to someone's house and the cops never get called when people are having great days. We get called when it's actually the worst time in someone's life. And so we have to go in and we have to deal with that. So if we can respond and deal with someone on the absolute worst day of their lives, and we can use these skills and it brings them down immediately, you guys can do the same thing. You just can't antagonize, and you have to make it all about them.
Right, it's about
They're the most important
de-escalation,
person here.
right?
Everything that happened is your fault. You own it, and it brings them down almost immediately. Because yes, de-escalation is the key. And in order to de-escalate, you've got to let them get some of that extra energy out. So you're going to have to let them vent on you a little bit. And so it's essentially, what that person is doing is they're attacking you. The attack is not going to last that long unless you feed it. If you feed the attack, it's going to keep going. So if you downplay
this is the time
is,
to
or
just
if you
say
try
to
to make
yourself,
them feel like, they should
I'm going to
suck
let
it up
them
and
get
get
their
over
emotional
it.
needs met. I'm going to get my emotional needs met every other Friday. And sell a nice repair here. Well, I guess it's a warranty. You ain't selling anything. Hurry up and get out of there and sell the next call.
Yeah. And yeah. But the thing you have to remember is, especially in any kind of service business, which is what you're dealing with right there, it's a service business. You're providing this service to people, and you want them to continue doing business with you. So, the long-term relationship is the most important thing. In the moment, any kind of satisfaction you could get as a technician in the moment by poking that bear is not going to pay you dividends. It's going to cause you heartache as the days move forward. So all you have to do is say, okay, I got about 45 seconds to deal with this person. They're going to vent on me. They're going to be upset. I'm going to just be, the most understanding person in the world, apologize profusely, label basically, how terrible the time has been for you in the past 7 days, and I'm really sorry. And okay, show me that air conditioning unit. Let's get it fixed. Let's cool you guys down. Make it all about them. It's not about you. Whatever the problem is, even if it's their problem, you're talking to somebody who doesn't technically know air conditioning, except that I don't like it when it doesn't work, and I'd be just like with that person complaining. But say they were responsible for doing something wrong. Say they had a setting wrong, or they did something wrong after the technician left that made the air conditioning not work right. So the technician goes in there and they see that it's not something that their technician did. It's something that the person did wrong. It's still the technician's fault. Are you following me? No matter what happens, it's not the person's fault. It's the technician's fault. And you can say that, oh my gosh, I see here, this right here is done like this. And, the guy must not have explained it really well to you or something. This is not the way that it should have been. And here, I'm going to fix it for you right now. Boom, there you go. The thing is, that homeowner knows that they're the ones that did that. So they're going to be gracious, and you're allowing them to save face and not look like an idiot because they had the button set wrong. So you're saving face. You're taking responsibility for it, even though you know and they know that they had the button set the wrong way. That's why the air conditioning wasn't working. They know that. But you're allowing them to save face, so it's going to pay dividends later because you doing that for them and helping
and you
them
got to be a hero for a second.
Something really stupid, like having
and you're going to feel a lot better about yourself walking out of that job.
You'll pay later when they call you back and they don't call anybody else.
Then you will if
you know what I mean?
See, you did. Yes. You had to do this, and then you walk out beating your chest. It's it's not something you want to get into.
Yeah. No, it's easier to, and this is how I put it with everybody. When you're talking about tactical empathy, they're always right. You're always wrong.
Texting as we speak.
Because at the end of the day, Oh, that's a Derekism. Don't let him hear that or know that I said that.
Really? Did he say that on the Waste No Day?
I heard him say it on his podcast,
Oh, wow.
and I was like, okay, I charge him $1 every time he says that at a live event because he says
I don't
it
know
a
if you
lot.
guys
Yes,
caught that,
it's a
but
joke.
the audience, Sandy's an avid listener.
Yes, he did. It's one of the first things he said. I was like,
why
he did
she's
it.
such
In fact,
a
I
good
think he said it
negotiator.
twice, like toward the beginning. And I was like, oh, Derek.
So Sandy, I mean, fantastic role play there, and thanks for jumping in on that.
There you go. That's right.
I didn't hear a lot of mirroring in that. So when would be the best
Absolutely.
time to
Be
bring
informed.
mirroring?
You should always be
obviously that was an
informed.
escalated situation. The customer is frustrated and annoyed. Like
That is a great question there. Like, do you want to mirror there and let them keep venting until they want to stop, or do you want to cut it off? Like, what's the ideal timing for that?
Mirroring is good when you don't have something to label. I always tell people mirroring is great for gathering more information so that you can actually label something worthwhile, because you can do a really surface label. Oh, I'm sorry, you must be so angry about that. That's actually pretty surface. It works, but if you know a deeper issue that you can label, it actually works a little bit better. It seems like you must have had a really rough time being stuck in the house with your family with the weather like it was and with so much heat. You know, that must have been awful. And you go a little bit deeper than just saying, wow, you must be angry about this. So mirroring sometimes in a situation when you have someone attacking you, you have to be careful about that because it comes across as you being kind of like smart. You know what I mean?
Wow,
Like,
just the way you
Yes,
did your
it's
voice
a
inflection
sarcastic
there
note.
was
Oh, you were hot?
so offensive.
I mean, what are you going to mirror in that situation? So, I mean, yeah. And the thing is, when you mirror, that's how they're going to take it. Yeah, because you're going to say, oh, it was hot. Yeah, it was hot. Like, stupid, my air conditioning's not working. You're actually adding fuel to the fire. So, in a sales situation, when you're trying to sell an upgrade on an air conditioner or something, maybe mirror that, because if they say, well, we have problems at sometimes when, late at night, it starts to get really hot upstairs. Really hot? Like, in other words, tell me more about what you mean by really, what is really hot to you is kind of what that says without you having asked that question. So using it in that situation would make more sense as opposed to trying to
So let's try that one,
somebody
Sandy. So,
when
hey, Sandy, I've been
rational
looking over
thinking is
the
out
options
window
here,
and their
and
emotions are high.
I know you really
That's
talked
just
highly
gonna
about adding
spark
this
them a little
widget
bit,
onto
probably
our
not the way we wanna
HVAC
go.
system, and I'm just not sure now's the right time. Yeah, I mean, it's like, the economy's not doing well. I look at the markets on a regular basis. There's a lot of instability
The
in
right
things,
time?
and I mean, we're talking about a lot of money here, so it gives me some trepidation. You know what I mean?
Okay, so see, I know you want me to mirror, but I wouldn't mirror there.
Yeah.
I would say it
So
seems like
you
you're
said that
a little worried
you stopped right there
about,
with the mirroring because you want
the
more
costs behind
you want more
doing this
info on
upgrade.
why he thinks. Okay.
And I get them to talk more about that. Because I already know where I'm going. I mirrored the time, but because I knew that he was talking about time as not as a time like time of day or time of year, but more time like the time at hand, and economics were probably bad. So, and that's where he went, exactly where I expected him to go with economics. And so right then I've already found the motivation for what he's saying. His motivation is the money, it's too expensive. So instead of having a 5-minute more conversation trying to get more information, I already know what the issue is.
And the first
I've already
mirror was
uncovered
so
the motivation.
natural,
The
and like
motivation
you could just
it
hear
seems
me, like I mean, that's
you're
how I felt.
worried
Like,
about the
oh well,
cost
she stopped
of
talking,
this
so obviously I
upgrade.
need to explain
Because
more.
that's what you're gonna
And it
say.
was like you were asking me why, without asking me why, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. And that's part of what a mirror does for you. It encourages the other side without you having to make them feel interrogated. Because a lot of times people, to get information, they want to ask questions and questions and questions and more questions. And especially, Nate, you would hate that because you're an analyst. So analysts hate to be asked direct questions. Labels and mirrors are the way to go with those kind of people, because if you ask them questions, they feel interrogated and they don't like to answer them, especially yes or no questions, because that's a definitive thing. And you're like, no, I need time to think about that. I don't want to give you an answer yet. So when you're dealing with somebody like that, the last thing you want to do is keep asking them direct questions. And since you don't know when you're going to these people's houses and you don't know what kind of personality type they are or what they would prefer, labels, mirrors, dynamic silence work on all three personality types. It doesn't matter. Then you're not asking questions. You're just using labels and mirrors. And, you can get to the bottom of what you want with a quick mirror. And if you're listening on the right level, and that's what happened there, was I was listening to you on a very deep level. So I was listening to you trying to figure out what the motivation was. The motivation is cost. So I went right there. If you're listening on an appropriate level in any conversation, you're going to find motivations. You're going to find the why behind.
Well, I'd love to spend another 20 minutes on that, but we do have to keep moving here, unfortunately. So that was one part of the three-part equation.
You can
tell us what the second part is.
So labels are those things, they're basically verbal observations. So it's whatever you're observing in someone's actions or what they're saying, or my favorite thing is what they're not saying. So for me, in that situation that you just did, what you were not saying was that it was cost prohibitive for you. So for me, I point out that negative. Seems like the problem is with the cost, because that's the negative that you're holding on to. So if I demonstrate that I understand that negative by labeling it, you can kind of let that go because now I get it. So it's not something that you're going to keep using as a pushback.
Do you know what a water softener is?
You get that I understand that it's the cost. And then we can move on to if there's something we can do about that. So
goodness, can we get a plumber over too?
You're going to ask me a question? Okay. I mean,
makes sense.
Okay, a water heater. You know what a water heater is?
If you sat it in front of me, I'd be like, what the hell?
And now you're just being condescending.
I don't know.
I won't stand for it.
It's okay.
I know what a water heater is.
There he goes.
All right. So you're saying that labels will be used to help identify what the actual reasoning is behind a choice, right? All right. So, hey, Sandy, I appreciate the fact that you want to look out for my family and, our hot water. Obviously, we all care deeply about taking hot showers, and that's something very nice. I'm just not quite sure that you said that the water heater age our water heater has kind of reached like a normal age limit. And I can't say that I've really felt anything different. So I'm not quite sure I would agree with you that now's the right time for replacement. Mm-hmm. Well, I can't say that it's functioning any differently than it did yesterday or 5 years ago. So, I mean, I know it's a mechanical piece of equipment, so it has an end life at some point, but it seems to be working just fine. Well, it is a lot of money. I do have to tell you that.
So,
and it's some money that I wasn't expecting to spend on a water heater.
Reason why you're not yet ready to replace it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so see, at this point, I wouldn't label again. I would just say we could look at some options and see which one may be able to fit with your finances and go with it that way.
Every day.
I think just based on some of the stuff that you guys are telling me now, it seems like the cost prohibition of things is something that you run up against a lot. So as long as your technicians are prepared to deal with the pushback on the cost and not be afraid to talk about it, because that's what gets them. People start talking about the cost and like, oh my gosh, they really can't afford this. I don't want to say anything to them about it. So then what you say instead is, so it seems like the cost of this new appliance or this new water heater might be what's holding you up. But you do it you're not like, so it seems like the cost is the issue. I mean, you don't want that kind of attitude. You want to, so it seems like, the cost may be the main issue, the replacement cost being so high. and then let them say, yeah,
Right.
that's I'm kind of looking at that.
And the label
Sure.
there is what
No oriented
specifically
question.
for
Would you be
that
against us
situation? The
looking
label
at some
is
different options to
cost,
see
and you're
which one
calling that
may be
out.
affordable for you. That you're calling that out because the negative that they're holding on to, the why behind.
So you use mirroring
them
to
holding back
dive
from committing
in,
to
get a
whatever
little
service you're
deeper,
giving
get a
them
little
is the
deeper, get a
cost.
little
And if that's what it
deeper
is, and you
until
think
you
it seems like the
finally
cost may be
achieve
something
label
that
status.
you're
Now,
concerned about.
for those of us who are, not 20-year veterans of doing these types of things, are there some cautions that we should be careful about? And how do we know when we've actually reached label status and it's time to stop and then call it a label? Ah, it depends.
I'm going to give you the $1 million answer. It depends. Yeah, I know you heard that too. It depends. It does depend. The thing is, there's no script for using this stuff. It's predicated on what the other side is giving you. So when you're having this conversation and you're looking at, okay, these people need a new water heater, I need to figure out how to make this happen. You need to start thinking from their perspective, and two, listening to what they're saying. Because if they're giving you a lot of information that you're missing if you're not listening, if you're not watching them. Because if you're trying to sell,
No, we all know
this is why
that
I
look.
can't do visual, because this is not a visual thing. But if they
Brian
have a look on
experiences
their
that
face,
look
it's like,
every time he sees a
I
mirror.
don't know about that, and you can see hesitation.
No
Yeah.
hesitation there,
So
buddy.
then you say,
I'm
it
going in.
seems like you're a little hesitant to go forward with this. You guys are funny. So everything you do is predicated on the information that you get. You can't get good information if first of all, if you're stuck up in your own head and you're so worried about what you're going to say, you're missing everything that's being said on the other side. That's one of the biggest issues we hear from people, is that they miss everything. So you don't need to be really cautious about mislabeling. You can make that educated guess. Anybody that's been in any kind of science class in school and they've been told, come up with a hypothesis, it's just an educated guess. So you're watching the situation, you're listening to what they're saying, and you're making your best educated guess about what their issue is. So you put that label out there. If you're wrong, it's okay. They're going to correct you. One of our laws of negotiation gravity says the urge to correct is irresistible. People cannot wait to tell you how wrong you get things. It's just a human nature thing. So they can't wait to tell you how wrong you got it, and then they tell you what the real thing is. So you get information. As long as you don't argue with them about it, you're good. So they tell you, no, I'm not feeling this way. It's not that. It's not the cost. It's this instead. Or it's the time. I don't want to have to wait so long for you to do it or whatever. They say it's not the cost. Okay, fine. If they say it's not the cost, then try to go in a different direction. Your underlying gut as a technician should tell you that it's probably the cost. Maybe they don't want to admit that it's the cost, but if they tell you it's not the cost, then try to go somewhere or some other way. But they will correct you. If they correct you, it's fine. Take that information. It's new information that you have that you didn't have 5 minutes ago. And you move forward. Now, the third part of this is dynamic silence. It should be the easiest skill to use. Believe it or not, it's the hardest. Because
And to be clear,
shut up,
this is the
for whatever reason,
technician
is really
part
difficult.
of the quiet, not the customer.
After you use a mirror, after you use a label, you need to be quiet. You need to just stop talking. Yes, it's the technician. And the thing that's bad is people who, say you have a technician who's a great technician, but he's not a good salesperson. So he's going to be really nervous, or she, whoever it is. It's going to be really nervous when, they go out to do this and they feel like they have to push this sale, they have to push the upgrade or whatever. They're going to feel really uncomfortable about that. Silence is going to be harder for the technician that is more nervous with the sales. Because when you get more nervous, what you do, you just start talking. You start talking because you don't know what else to do, and the person is not going to talk as long as you're talking, which means they can't tell you no.
Okay.
So you're just going to nervous chatter, and it doesn't get you anywhere. So
Sandy,
a lot of
how do
people
we
really have to
practice dynamic
practice
silence? I mean,
with the dynamic
yeah,
silence.
is this something we can do in the
You
grocery
really have
line
to
when we're we're at
focus
the checkout,
on
or when
skill,
the
go quiet.
dentist issues us a bill? Can we just look at it and wait for them to explain it to us? Like, how do we practice dynamic silence?
Dynamic silence, and this is probably why it's one of the more hard or more difficult skills for people to work on, because how do you practice being quiet? I mean, that's hard. What you have to practice doing is practice being quiet after you use the skill, because that's when it's the most important. Earlier, when we did that exercise and I labeled time, something about time for you, I didn't say anything. And you sat there for a second and you started talking. In your mind computed, okay, she's not going to say anything else. I'm going to keep talking. And that's what your human nature did for you. That's what it does for people, but you have to give them that silence. Silence is, and I'm going to tell everybody right now, go read our blog post, because there have been 2 or 3 good blog posts that have come out recently about silence and how important it is and how it's absolutely necessary after our skills, because if you don't give somebody silence after using one of our skills, they can't process. They have to have, 2 seconds at least to process what you just said. And if you start talking immediately after that, you're ruining their thought process that should be happening after the skill you use. So practice mirror, practice label, practice being silent after that. So if you want to do it in the grocery store, that's fine. You go up to the person. It's one of my favorite things to do is talk to the people. Like if you go to Target and you go to check out, that poor person has probably been there for hours, and the people in front of you and the people behind you are going to treat that person like crap. They're going to throw their card at them or whatever they do and walk away. Yeah, thanks. They're completely disregarded as people sometimes. So I watch while I'm in line, and I see what the person in front of me does. I see how the cashier is reacting, and when I get up there, I label the dynamic. Either, wow, seems like he's been really busy in here today. And they just go talking. I've got someone's whole life story in probably less than 5 minutes one time as she's checking out my thing, because I labeled
That
her.
sounds
Because
horrific.
no one ever talks to them. So they're the perfect people to practice on. Grocery stores, Target, the Walmart, or wherever it is that you go.
And Nate and I travel together pretty often, and he's like blown away
Yes,
by
not something that Nate would be a big fan of, I can see.
I'll look at his face after having a random conversation with a stranger, and he's like, how did that even happen? It's like the weird thing.
It's great, and it's the perfect way to practice.
Well,
so Brian,
hang on. Nobody ever said that Brian was practicing silence. Let me tell you, he is not.
Oh, no, I do about using their skills is that they feel awkward and they feel like whoever they're talking to knows what they're doing. Well,
right.
Oh. He's an accommodator. Why are you surprised with this? He's Chatty Cathy, right? When you go out and you random conversations with strangers, I love that. That's a whole thing. You should start taping it. You can use the skills, and having random conversations with strangers is the best way to practice, because they don't know what you're doing because they don't know you. Now, a lot of coaching clients that I have will say, I'll have 4 sessions. That's a typical 4 sessions with them. And by session 3, they're saying, I started talking to my wife about this stuff, and she said, stop using that stuff on me. And I told her I wasn't doing anything. I said, well, why'd you lie? You are doing something. You're practicing new communication. So you just lied to her, which then makes her feel like she's being manipulated. I said, so why would you do that? Just be honest. Yeah, you know what? I'm learning these new skills. It's a whole new communication technique. It's great. You should check it out. Look at this. It's helping me be a better communicator. And then ask them to actually help you practice it, because then it gets you into, talking together. I've had so many clients tell me, you saved my marriage, because I told them, start using the skills together. It's a way for you to put your significant other first, listen to what they have to say, and let them have their say, and then wait, because it will be reciprocated. That's what tactical empathy is all about, right? It kind of, you put it out there first, and then they reciprocate. because they feel obligated at that point. It's a reciprocity game. And one of the best ways that everyone can test reciprocity is if you go to the mall, you open up that outer door, you hold it open for somebody and they walk through, and they hold the next door open for you. Because it's a human nature social obligation that when you hold the door for someone, they feel like they have to hold the door for you. So try that out. I mean, I told my daughter this, and then her and her friends started playing mall games, and so they'd run out there and they'd open the door and run up to open the door for someone to see what would happen. Because I also told them, when the person walks through, they're going to open the door for you. However, if they don't, it's going to be for one of two reasons. One, they're going to stand there and wait for you to open the door for them because they're narcissists and have total entitlement issues, and they expect you to open the door for them. Or they're going to open the door and walk through and let it slam in your face or shut right on you. Those are the sociopaths, and whichever way they go in the mall, you don't go that direction, you go the other direction. So it's the mall door game. But it just kind of shows you how reciprocity, it's something that happens in someone's brain because now they feel like they owe you, and people don't like to owe you, so they will reciprocate as quickly as possible. And that's what you see with these skills too, because you demonstrate an understanding for what
So maybe I'm missing it here, Sandy, but in our world, I would tend to think that most of our technicians, plumbers, and electricians feel like they are charging money. They're doing a service, and I don't know that charging money counts as reciprocity because it's like an expected exchange. So if I'm a technician, a plumber, an electrician, how does that methodology fit into my in the home scenario? Because it's a service at charge, right? So I'm not doing it. This isn't a barter. I'm not coming in there and be like, hey, I'll fix your water heater if you fix the tire on my car. Like, we're in there to charge money, and in fact, we're in there in most cases to charge a lot of money, way more than the client expected to pay at that time. So if that's the case, how does that reciprocity piece function? Okay.
Reciprocity
So
is not always about what they're going to give you in the moment.
and what am I required to do if I'm a tech? What am I required to do so that they feel a need for repeat business?
People will go with the business that made them feel the best. Sometimes even if it's not the best as far as price goes, but if they felt heard and understood by you, and their issues were addressed without making them feel like they were a burden or that they're stupid for having the issues or not understanding the issues, all of those things frame a person's thoughts and feelings about you. And if they're positive, they're more likely to come back for that repeat business. I mean, so depending on what kind of company that you have, or they're more likely to refer, because if they like you, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I have a great HVAC person here. I use these people. They were great. Word of mouth, people passing the card around, people saying, that's the person I did business with. This is who you should call. That makes all the difference in the world. So reciprocity in your kind of situation, I mean, you don't want the person to have to call you back for new HVAC.
One of the biggest ways that I think that speaks to me right now, Sandy, is, so much of our world is based upon 5-star reviews. And I don't mean the podcast world, although it does. I'm talking about the technician world, right? So an easy way of making that tit for tat, that this for that scenario with a client is, hey, Sandy, so did you feel like I gave you level 10 service today? All right, well then let's hear the master class.
See, that's not how I would do it, Nate. I would say label. Yeah, because see, you're asking a yes-oriented question. People don't like to say yes. They don't feel protected when they say yes.
Is there anything I've done today that makes you think I did not give you a level 10 service or a 10 level service?
Yeah, that's good.
Isn't that a yes
You could
question
even
though?
say, so, it looks like you're okay with how the service went today, and you're labeling it. Seems like you're okay. It seems like you're okay. No, it seems like you feel pretty good about the service you received today. And it may be yes oriented, but you're labeling that dynamic, you're labeling that situation. You're not asking them, did you feel good about our service today? It comes across differently. The words do mean something.
Yeah, it was great.
Because when you just say, did you feel okay about the service today? It's different than saying, so it seems like because we're doing it with a question in our voice.
Yeah,
So
I
it
want
seems
them to
like
leave
you're
a
okay
5-star
with the service
review
you
on
got
Google
today?
for me.
And then it's like, yeah, I'm concerned, you know what I mean? And so then I don't know what you want them to do. If you want them to go do a review or
And there's a
so then you say,
no
would it
oriented
be
question there.
Yeah,
question for you to consider
we
giving us a
train our
5-star
teams on that
review
a lot. Where
if you were,
so we have
for being happy with our service today,
our
or something
teams are
like that?
heavily trained to say things like, "Is my truck
Yes.
parked in a good spot?"
Yes.
Before they enter the door. Do you mind if I put my floor protectors on and come in? And we've been training them since Chris was on, and since we really dove into the Black Swan Group training to say, "Is there any issue with where my truck's parked?" But what we don't train is, would it be out of the question to ... That's one more awesome way to phrase it that I never think about.
Yeah.
I think all my people on your newsletter at least. So yeah.
I'm a big proponent of making everything we say something they can feel, like making it visceral.
Would it be an inconvenience?
So, would it be out of the question? Would I be asking too much? Would it be impossible for you to consider doing this? I mean, yes. Would it be a complete inconvenience for you to do whatever?
Would it be too much trouble?
So, the more varied ways you can come up with those no-oriented questions, they sound less robotic. Yeah, would it be too much trouble? Would it be too much to ask? Is a good one too. Would it be too much to ask for you to leave the 5-star review or whatever? I will say that people will be more likely to do it if they really like you. Now, I have someone who comes out and sprays the exterior of my house. I forget what the name of the company is. I don't want to say it anyway, but they come out and spray once a month the outside of my house when the weather's warm, because I don't like ants and other things coming in my basement. So I get that done. Well, the guy that came today was amazing. He was just very friendly. He spoke to my dog. He didn't have to. She's the size of a polar bear. Most people are intimidated by her, but he spoke to her. He was really nice. I even said, look, I've seen some ants. I said, they're not up by the house at the end of the driveway, but, and I haven't seen them going towards the house, but they kind of give me concern. He was like, I can take care of that for you. So he sprayed for the first time ever today, because he was, and not that he was any more friendly than anybody else, but he kind of went out of his way to have a conversation with me. And the other guys have all been nice and great. But this guy just made an impact because of that, because he just had a conversation with me. And when they sent that text basically saying, would you rate our service, for the first time ever, and I've had this contract for over a year now, I went and filled out a good review for him because he made an impact on me. So you don't have to be this over-the-top ridiculous person. A simple conversation. You walk in and you see that they're watching TV. Pay attention to what's on the TV and say, oh, it looks like whatever.
Yeah, Brian would be
today.
like, oh, I love this
Whatever.
episode of Days
point
of Our
out something
Lives.
that's outside of the job that you're there for, that you notice about them, that demonstrates that you're paying attention.
I don't know.
We have stuff to do. Nate's sitting around
Brian?
watching TV during the day. We don't know what's on, Sandy. We're busy.
Is that still a thing? Days of Our Lives? Brian's like, how dare you?
So Sandy, I mean, one of the things that I think I would struggle with, and perhaps some less well-trained people would be timing. When is it time to give that silence? Because I should ask, if we misstep on the timing, like if we go silent too early, or we talk too much and then go silent too late, does that affect it? Or is that another one of those things where, hey, even if you mislabel it, you still gave it a best guess. So even if you mistime the silence piece, it's still okay or not?
I think you shouldn't overthink it. That's the biggest mistake that people make. They get overly concerned about how exactly to frame this or frame that or say that, when really the most important thing when you're going into this and you're talking about tactical empathy is your mindset. Because if you're making it all about the other side, if you're making them feel important, if you're making them feel understood and heard, you're going to get to tactical empathy. By being likable, by being concerned, by being friendly, you're going to manage to get some tactical empathy in there without having to use every single one of our skills. The skills are there because that's what's going to get you there faster. Okay, the skills are there as strategy for you to use to actually be able to get you to tactical empathy very easily. You can do it in a regular conversation if you focus all on the other side and you make it less about you and you listen more than you talk. That's how I got good confessions, because if you talk all the time, you're not getting any information.
It makes sense,
side.
Sandy. It's
So if you
not a
practice
difficult concept
listening more than you're talking,
at least to understand.
you get much more
And yet
information
for so many people who are trying to be good communicators and spend their days talking to clients and all that, it is a difficult concept to employ.
Mm-hmm.
And hence the practice, right?
Right. And so practice, yes, but let me give you the levels of listening really quickly. If you're not opposed to that. There are 5 of them. Level 1 is listening for the gist of the conversation and then going back into your own internal narrative. Okay? It's kind of like when you assume you know what someone's going to say, so you don't bother listening. That's level 1. Level 2 is what I call the marriage killer, because it's the listening until you hear what you think the problem is, listening until you hear whatever it is you want to argue about, and then cutting off the listening and then just going in with the information afterwards. Okay, that's that listening for rebuttal. That's level 2. If you can get past both of those levels and get to level 3, which is like listening for their internal logic, which is like why what they're saying makes sense to them, why they're doing what they're doing, what is their motivation behind this, what's their thought process here. If you can get to that and just ask yourself, why is this happening? That's all the part of staying curious that we talk about. If you can stay there, you're in good shape. Now there's a level 4 and a level 5. That level 4, you get to that emotion and logic behind the why. That gets deep. Level 5 is where we always had to be when we were doing a hostage situation, because you have to be at that total empathetic listening where you're listening for everything. Everything that's going on with them, every single cue they're giving you. You want their whole world view,
10
all the emotions
hours.
that go with it.
A 10-hour sale.
It's
like
hard to maintain.
We
You're
really are
exhausted
like
when you're done.
spent
The longest
when you get home,
negotiation I
especially
did
from
was almost 10
a
hours.
day in the skilled trades, when you say run 4 maintenance calls and you try to sell 4 things and you don't, and you spend 90 minutes with each person, you are wiped out way more than if you sold a huge job and did it in a crawl space all day. I can't even imagine what 10 hours of like, I don't know what's on the line in that particular situation, but probably justice at least for something.
Yeah. This person had just shot his girlfriend and sat the baby outside on the front step and then barricaded himself in the house. And so I was on the phone with him for 10 hours. And then they made me leave, because you can only, they probably should have made me leave earlier, honestly, but we had to get another team in place to take over for us. So I was on with him that whole time until the next team got in place, and that's when they pulled me out. It didn't end well. And Derek was my commander at the time, and I'll never forget him saying to me, it's not about what the bad guy chooses to do. It's basically that everybody else went home safe today. The only person that ended up in a not good place was the bad guy, and it wasn't anything we did. It was his choice. So, tough for me to live with at first, but I had to eventually understand that, yeah, he made that decision. I didn't make that decision. The thing he did do for me was he waited till he and I were no longer on the phone. We talked for so long. We had a nice little bond going, to the point where at one point he wasn't saying anything. So I just kept talking, and I would go silent and he still wouldn't say anything. So I just keep talking. And finally he said, "You talk a lot." And I said, "Yeah, that's what my husband says too." And we both laughed. So, we had, and this was not a nice guy. I mean, he was not a good guy. But he and I formed this little bond through my use of tactical empathy to the point where he was bonded to me so much,
grateful to the guy
that
for the
he would
small
not
mercy,
take his life with me on the phone.
The girlfriend didn't get the mercy.
He waited until the next guy came on, and it took 7 minutes. The next guy. It's a hard pill to swallow, let me tell you. No, she didn't die. She didn't live, but there was no mercy there. And it just, it's difficult when you put that much effort into something and then you just see it blow up the second you walk away from it. And then you second guess yourself for the longest time about, oh, what if I'd done this? What if they just left me on the phone? There's all these what ifs. But you're exhausted. You're completely exhausted. It wears you out. And that's level 5 listening. You can't maintain that. It's not something that you can maintain. But you can maintain a level 3. And then when you get in the middle of something really serious, you can pop to level 4 or 5 if you need to for a little bit, and then come back down to that level 3. But if you start practicing your listening by paying more attention to the other side and what's going on the other side, and
that must be so difficult. I'm trying to put myself in that place where you're getting on an emotional level with a horrific person.
If you just pay attention.
And like, I mean, how did you deal with separating the emotions of like laughing at a joke together with somebody that had just murdered somebody? Like, I don't know, that I struggle to understand that.
Yeah. It's a job. It's a mindset. I mean, when you think about it, I worked sex crimes too. And so I dealt with victims all the time that had been, brutally assaulted. And so being able to cut off from that and just see it as a job and then go home to my 3 daughters, it's and you have to learn. There's a fine line you draw for yourself, and never the two shall meet. I worked youth sex and abuse cases, and I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter, and I realized she's never going to leave the house if I stay in this position, which is why I left and went to burglary. And then, she got to be 3 or 4 and she started going to school, and I thought, all right, I can handle it now. So then I went into adult sex crimes, a little different world. But there are things you have to come up with, much like you handle your triggers when you're dealing with somebody in just a difficult conversation. You have to learn how to separate out, getting emotionally involved. And it's funny because you can never turn off your emotions. Emotions are there. They're always there. And you can't just all of a sudden decide that you're not going to be emotional, because emotions factor into every decision you make in your life. Even when you try and say they're not going to, they always do. Emotions are always there, which is why when you're dealing with someone, and if you're a technician going to someone's house, you have to think about where the fear is coming from, because you can't address someone and speak to them about logical things that you need to talk to them about if they're holding on to fear about the situation. So for a lot of people that your technicians are dealing with, they're dealing with the fear of economic devastation of replacing an entire HVAC system, because it's extremely expensive. So the fear is, if I do this, I better not have anything else go wrong in my life and no vacations for 2 years, or I'm not going to be able to afford to replace this HVAC system. Your technicians need to understand that fear is the single biggest driver of human decision-making and behavior. So when you think about it that way, what do they fear? What are they afraid of? They're afraid of this being so expensive that they can't do it. They're also afraid that if they don't do it, especially if you're looking at someone with a family and they're thinking, but I can't have my whole family living here with a heating and air conditioning system that doesn't work. So there's a lot of things tied into that are emotional. And so it's not just about trying to get them to buy this system. It's dealing with the fear that's associated with buying that system or not buying that system. There's fear tied up in every end of that, and that's an emotion. And in order to get that person on an even keel where they can think about that, you need to demonstrate an understanding about that. Oh, I know this is something that's extremely expensive.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I would agree with that. And in certain situations where desperation decisions, the water heater is definitively dead, the HVAC system is absolutely dead, the electrical panel is absolutely dead. A lot of fear with, if I don't do this, what's going to happen? Mm-hmm. How do you flip that on its head and view it from a different perspective, if it is different, when we're talking about upgrades, upsales, optional things that you can add that are luxurious or beneficial to your quality of life, the feel of your water, the electronic air cleaner that purifies the air, the ground fault circuit interrupting outlets, or the arc fault breakers, or whatever, that are additional safety features that aren't necessarily required, but could bring a lot of value. So do you view that differently than the fear emotions, or is it the same?
Mm-hmm. It's a little of both, because it could be the fear of missing out on something that's so much better. But it could also be the fear of really wanting this but not being able to afford it. So I think in that situation, what you might be looking at that may be better to get you more information is a couple of calibrated questions. What would it look like for your family if you had these extra safety things on this whatever? And I'm sorry, I'm not technical, but you know what I'm saying. What would it look like for you to buy an HVAC system that will last for the next 20 years instead of one that you're going to have to replace again in 8 years? So, I mean, you give them that, and they basically figure that out in their own mind, and sometimes will come right to your conclusion. Also, then again, when you start talking about that and you start giving them something where it's actually doable for them or something that they really want, it may come back to cost. And that's what you're
so right on there, Sandy. And we appreciate you so much for covering those three foundational principles for us.
The technician needs to be well-versed.
If some of our technicians and our listeners feel like they've made some good progress in these areas, they're mirroring well, they're labeling well, they're using that dynamic silence, where would you say would be the next step or the next focus point for somebody to take their communication and presentation game to another level?
Oh, it's so hard. You want me to kind of pick our skills? We have so many decent things that could really work in the situations that your people find themselves in. One thing that comes to mind is the no-oriented questions, because that's something that's really, really easy to implement. And especially if you have some go-to that you can give your people to use, like the ones we talked about a little earlier. One of the things that might be really beneficial for you guys to learn as technicians is accusations audits. Those are basically preemptive labels. Those are labels that speak to the negatives before the people have time to say them. So like when you're going up and you know that air conditioner just flopped and you're going to try and fix it and it was done already yesterday, but now it's not working again. First thing you say is, you're probably really upset with us because the system's already breaking down on you. You might feel really angry and blame the technician for doing something wrong. I mean, and those negative things that they're thinking, if you put them out there first, it takes the power away from them. So it would be worth...
Or episode 100 of the Waste No Day podcast.
Anybody listening to this podcast to go to our YouTube page and listen to some videos.
I highly recommend the YouTube page. All of their trainers are on there with tons of videos. I got to tell you,
there
favorite.
You go. Absolutely.
It's my least favorite, probably, social media platform to use, but my favorite one for the Black Swan group is LinkedIn. You guys put a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. And I think it seems like most of the articles that come through on the newsletter are also posted on the LinkedIn. So go to LinkedIn and follow Black Swan.
Yeah.
Follow Sandy Hein for sure. And do you?
Yeah. And ask questions on LinkedIn. If you see us post things on LinkedIn, because I know there are a few of us. I know I'm one of them. If we've posted something and you ask a question underneath, we always try to answer.
Where do they go for the newsletter?
If you want to kind of interact and put a question out there, that might be a way to do it very easily. Is on LinkedIn. BlackSwanLTD.com. It's called The Edge. You just click on The Edge and you can see the newsletter there. You can actually subscribe if you want to, and they send it to you every Tuesday when it comes out, or you can just go in and read them whenever you want to on the website. But, yep. But, YouTube is, and it's not one of my favorite platforms either, but it is very good when you want to help with a specific thing, because you can go to the Black Swan page and type in accusations audits and pull it right up and watch 1 or 2 videos. I would say if you take 5 minutes every day, 5 minutes into your lunch hour, first thing in the morning while you're eating your breakfast or having your coffee, look at a couple videos, read a blog post, read a few chapters of the book here and there whenever you can. You will build your confidence up the more information you give yourself on it, and the more practice you give by looking at our stuff and going out there and actually using it. Don't take our word for it that it worked. Go out there and try it, because that's what's going to convince you, is when you do a couple things and you see how well it works. And you're going to go, wow, okay. Practice with your kids. That's what I'm going to tell you, because kids are, for one thing, they're like sponges. If you want to teach them how to communicate well, you have to model that.
There's no
and to model that
manipulation.
Stuff,
there's no
they're going to start using it, which will make them better
bending the truth or twisting or anything. As if anyone's heard all the episodes we've done, but if you go there and watch their YouTube videos and see what they post, it's all for the betterment of everyone. Like Chris Voss's big quote on it is, in a successful negotiation, both sides win. And they do firmly believe and firmly teach those principles. So I can't recommend it enough. I also can't recommend enough, as I say on here all the time,
yes,
investing in yourself. Benjamin Franklin had a great quote. If you, I'm going to butcher it, but it was something like, if you really want to spend money well, if you really want to invest in something, pour your purse into your head. And that's a great quote about investing into yourself. And Black Swan Group has tons of trainings that you can invest in, and live events and virtual events. And do you guys have any live events coming up? All right, that's closer. That's closer. I like it.
Derek and I both
in Arizona now, so here we go.
This month in a few weeks, and then I'll be in Salt Lake City in
Nate,
October.
all over it.
And Salt Lake City. In October.
He was going to say it if I didn't. That was just me beating him to the punch.
We actually have a women's retreat coming up in Park City. You guys just rag on each other, don't you? I love it. He's lagging a little bit. He's a little tired. You managed to get ahead of him on that one. And we have a 2-day event, which you really should do a 1-day event before the 2-day event until next year when things
nice. But, I can finally get that autograph.
Yeah, 1 day in New York City, 1 day in Salt Lake City, and actually Chris will be at the 1 day in Salt Lake City with me. So it'll be Chris and I in Salt Lake City. So there you go. See. And it'll be Derek and I and 2 or 3 other instructors. There's a lot of us in New York this time.
And they can go to the website and find all that?
It's just a great place to go, and there's always a big group of people there, so we try to have a lot of us there for New York. But just Chris and I in Salt Lake City, and that is in October. Oh, yeah. You can look under our events on the website, and I would encourage you. We just started something called the Learning Journey. I did a virtual tactical empathy presentation. We've got tonality coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we have negotiation 9 coming up, our 9 core skills.
We lost all the electricians now. You see what you did?
And a very in-depth quick 2+1. Sorry, I'm bringing the math up again. The quick 2+1. That labels, mirrors. Yeah, labels, mirrors, dynamic silence. that one is coming up also. And those are very affordable. They're, I think, around $120, which compared to some of the other stuff we do, which is very expensive, is very reasonable. So you can also go and listen to our stuff online and pay like $59 to
you can actually go
to
on.
watch something that's already
really
been recorded that we had done before.
Presentation training.
There are a lot of affordable
cheap.
options.
It's very expensive, and
we know that our stuff is expensive.
There is not a lot of it that's geared toward what we do. And I always recommend that stuff. I'm like, go spend the money and go do it. You're going to spend your money anyway. But this is a next level thing for me. You hear me talk about it on the show all the time, and people that I train in person hear me talk about it and recommend this all the time. Nobody in our space is doing it. So if you want to get to another level, get the trainers in our space that everybody uses. If you want to get to yet another level, integrate something like the Black Swan Group's training into what you're doing, and you will be a top-notch communicator from it. Unbeatable, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is one thing I can say, is that people that I've worked with have basically come away saying, not only did I increase, what I was doing business-wise, my interpersonal communications in my life overall has, that game has just gone crazy. So, everybody talks about how much better they are and how much better
Love
they
it. When is
communicate
the Sandy
from
Hein
learning
book
our
coming
skills.
out?
But like I said, 5 minutes a day, watch that YouTube video, read the book,
Ooh,
read a blog.
I did
Every
not know
little bit
that.
helps. Sandy Hein book hopefully is coming out before next summer. I'm currently working on it. currently working on it. Chris's thing when I first came on, he said, everyone has to write a book. And I said, I've already written 2 books. He goes, that they don't count. They're not Black Swan books. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I'll write another book. But it's called Empathy, the Great Equalizer. And it basically speaks to the underdog. The people who have not always felt equal for one reason or another. And so they use the skills and it puts them up there. It equalizes everything out. So, if you're someone who feels like nothing ever seems to go your way, you start using some tactical empathy, and we talk a little bit in there about how
what were your 2
empathy
books?
can equalize things out for you. And that's my book. Yes. Well, my books were more law enforcement type things. One of them was just a little handbook that I kind of got requested to write for the publisher that I was
just
working
thinking,
for at the time.
I'd love to.
And the other one is
Read 'em, but now
about
I'm taking a step
sexual
back
assault
from that.
cases. My work that I did in sexual assault cases. So they're.
Ooh. No, sir. You leave that in there, buddy.
Really, the sexual assault book is basically. Wow, I almost said a how-to book. That's not what I want to say. Cut that part out, Ethan. That's not what I want to say. It's really a book that talks about how prosecutions go and don't go the way they should, and how, it's called Why Are We Blaming Victims or Shaming Victims instead of Blaming Offenders? And so it's kind of a play on the victim blaming, because it's not really, it's not going to do any good to shame offenders. It doesn't do anything good to shame them as much as it does to blame victims. So either way is not a good way to do it. But it just talks about how hard the cases are to prosecute and the different steps you have to go through. And it kind of walks you through everything that has to happen in a sexual assault.
If you don't end up with that working title for the book you have right now,
prosecution.
I was trying to think of name for this episode. The last woman on earth you want to argue with. And maybe underline last, because I'm talking to Chris, I'm talking to Brandon, Voss, I'm talking to Derek Gaunt.
There you go.
Yeah, my wife can
I have been told that.
I don't think this would be an issue for her. But now we have a woman who is highly trained negotiator, on top of your natural ability to negotiate, which you all seem to be born with.
Women do that well. I'm glad you recognize that. I'm glad your wife is lucky, because women actually, women listen to Bond. So that makes their listening level higher, which makes them really good at these skills. It all comes back to how well you listen. I keep telling people that no one listens to me, but how well you listen. Yes. See, there you go. But it's because you can't use our skills unless you're listening on a good level, because you don't have the information you need to be able to use the skills that are going to make a difference. So you have to listen on a high level. And
that makes perfect sense.
Tend to listen.
And there's been no shortage
reasons.
of information today, Sandy. It's been fantastic. As we wrap up things, the female, the woman thing was a great segue into the final question for you here. As a woman and as a homeowner, if you could give advice to our industry, I'm sure you've had a plumber or an HVAC guy or an electrician into your house before. If you could give advice to our industry in terms of what makes the difference for you, because a lot of times our guys are dealing with women, for one reason or another. That's just a lot of times who we're dealing with in the home, at least at face value. So speak to that. Take us out on that in terms of what are the things that we in the trade should be focusing on to better communicate, to better empathize, to better do our job when it comes to a female in the home.
Don't assume that we don't have any knowledge about what you're doing. Because while I may not know how to put an HVAC system into place, if I know you're coming out to talk to me about that HVAC system, I'm going to do a little research on it. So I'm going to have a little bit of an understanding. So don't talk to me as if I don't understand anything. If people have and not just, I'm not talking about technicians, I'm talking about people in general, have a different view of women and things in the house and what they should and should not know about. So when you come out, talk to me as if I'm educated on what you're talking about. Because if I don't know, I'm going to tell you, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then when I say that, don't make me feel stupid because you have to explain it to me. But that doesn't go for just women. You should be doing that with everybody. You should be, why do we call, if I knew all about it, I wouldn't need to call you, right? I'm calling you in because I need you to do this for me because I don't know how to do it. So when you come out there, just be matter of fact with me. Talk to me as if I'm a human being. Don't make me feel bad or shame me for whatever my system is that's not good enough. Anybody working with you guys, just listening to you guys talk, probably doesn't do any of that. But just being respectful, just not shrugging me off when I ask a question that to you probably seems like a stupid question. Go with the thought that there aren't any stupid questions, really. There's only questions that people need answers to, and stay curious as to why I'm asking you. You're missing a lot of opportunities, especially with women, because women are the ones that are probably more likely to get that upgrade, honestly, and be less pushy about not taking that upgrade, or more willing to listen to what you have to say.
Sound advice to take us out, Sandy. Thank you so much for being on today.
They want to trust you. Show them that they can trust you by not manipulating them.
I know in
your
guys' neck of the woods,
instead.
it's 10:15 at night on a Thursday. And let me tell you, Sandy,
thank you guys for having me. It was fun.
From the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate both of you sticking with me this late. And, because we got to do this thing when Nate's kids go to bed. So it just is what it is, But greatly appreciate you both jumping on and staying so late. No problem whatsoever. If it's not your dog, it's one of our kids. We get some distractions.
Well, and I'm sorry about the dog. Sorry about the dog kind of.
That's right.
Freaking out a little bit. But yeah, no, you guys, this is fun.
For the audience that doesn't know until tonight.
So it just gives Ethan a little extra work to do. I keep saying his name. So hi, Ethan.
Doing our editing.
Practice the skills, Ethan.
And we told Sandy that in the beginning, and she's been giving Ethan props the whole time. So he's going to love this episode. It's as much better than getting paid, isn't it, Ethan? By the Black freaking Swan Group, bro. The Black Swan Group.
There you go. See? Just tell all your friends. I get talked about in this episode. Go listen.
Well, hey, that's a wrap for this podcast. We hope that you enjoyed the show with Sandy. She had so much good advice, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. The Black Swan Group,
you guys
Sandy,
are great.
and her
This has been
entire
so much
team
fun.
over there have so much more to offer. Please make sure you're checking out their blog, their newsletter, and YouTube. So much training is out there, even for free or for a very economical price. And she, of course, mentioned some of the off-site or all-day events that are coming up as well. If those interest you or in your area, please make sure that you're checking those out too. A lot of great advice today and really simple concepts: mirroring, labeling, and dynamic silence. It's not rocket science, but it is something that you have to work at, practice, and implement into your regular and daily presentation. So we encourage you to do that. We encourage you to always be getting better, to always be focusing on what that next level is for you. And of course, to make sure that you choose to wake up every single morning and waste no day.